big boss that's special. It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level. Second level gaming. Second level.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back, or welcome to the official Level 2 podcast, episode 53. My name is Keegan, one half Level 2 Gamers, hanging out with Tom, the other half Level 2 Gamers. How are you doing right now?
Right now?
Right now.
I'm all right. Yeah.
I'm going to adjust this.
I'm still a little chilly.
I was going to say chilly in your willy, but I don't want to know.
Well, yes. Weather sucks in St. Louis right now, but outside of that, I'm having a good time. We've had some good news. As we've been going through these podcasts, we got a nice... we talked about on Codename Morpheus yesterday about that board game thing, and you sent a message to the guy, and within 30 seconds we had a
He's like,
copy
"Hey, what's
on
your
its way."
He's like, "What's your address?" I was like,
that was cool.
There you go.
And we're going to talk about some things that I like talking about today on the Level 2 podcast. So I'm excited.
The way the podcast works is I pick a topic, we then do a thing in the middle, whether it's a game or a exciting story, and then you pick a topic. Well, our topics are going to be related. It's going to be one giant topic, kind of, with a break in the middle.
We both picked the same topic, but we wanted to separate it slightly differently.
Yes.
So,
last 2 years, I've gone to Wizard World St. Louis, otherwise known as Comic-Con St. Louis, otherwise known as Wizard World Comic-Con, otherwise known as a lot of other names that they...
WizCon is my favorite.
Technically, Wizard World St. Louis is the official name.
Correct.
I've gone the last 2 years. You went last year. We interviewed a bunch of people, a lot of cosplayers. We interviewed what's his face?
Conroy?
That's his name. I just like Batman,
Lester,
Robin, Lauren
Lester,
a few
Michael
others.
Rooker. Big names.
Yeah. And the year before that, I was just wandering around with a fucking vlog camera.
Yep.
So, story being, we got press passes again this year, so we will be at Wizard World St. Louis again this year, which is, I got to double check my dates to make sure I get it correct, February 2nd through 4th at the America Center in St. Louis. So, if you're going to be there, let us know. Our friend Thousand Faces Cosplay is going to be there. We're hoping to set some stuff up with them like we did at Indie PopCon, because those guys are awesome. I'm going to go quick rundown of some guests here that are showing up.
Go ahead.
And then we'll get into some other details in a second. So, the featured celebrity guest for St. Louis Wizard World Comic-Con 2018, whatever the fuck it's called. Sebastian Stan, who is also known as Bucky, or the Winter Soldier from Captain America. Sean Bean is apparently from Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. Never watched either of those. Billy Boyd is from Lord of the Rings. Never watched that. Sean Austin is from it's apparently Lord of the Rings year.
There's a lot of Lord of the Rings.
They always have a theme. So like 2 years ago it was Doctor Who. Last year it was supposed to be Dexter, but Dexter called out.
Dexter called in sick.
Yeah, Dexter called in sick. John Barrowman from Arrow, Doctor Who, and Torchwood. Dan Fogler from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Bonnie Wright from Harry Potter series or franchise. She's Ginny Weasley for anybody who didn't know. Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville and the Justice League. Nichelle Nichols, is that how you say her name? Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek.
She's always there.
Yeah. James Frayne from Gotham. Jon Heder from Napoleon Dynamite and a bunch of other stuff.
Excited by that one.
He's one actually I feel like he's a fun dude to hang out with. I have a story about him in a second. Can't remember if I said it on the show or not. Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk.
He called out last year, so it'd be good to see him.
Yeah, he was added this. He was there 2 years ago because I remember seeing him and I was like, "Holy fuck, that guy's huge."
Big dude.
Lucy Davis from Wonder Woman, James Marsters from Buffy, Smallville, and Marvel's Runaways, Holly Marie Combs from Charmed Picket Fences and Pretty Little Liars, and Thomas Ian Nicholas from Rookie of the Year / I didn't know he's an American Pie. Apparently, he's an American Pie.
Yeah, he is.
Did not know that. Jon Heder story before we go any further, because I got to tell this story. So there's an interview with him that I found. Jimmy Kimmel, one of those late night talk shows. Jimmy Kimmel, Dave Letterman, whichever one it was. Which Dave Letterman's show on Netflix is really good.
I saw the first episode last night. It was great.
It's real good.
Yeah.
But Jon Heder one time, he's a big gamer, which it kind of sucks because we're gonna go through who we can interview. Basically, we're not allowed to interview him. He's on the list of you cannot interview people, which kind of blows. But he's a big gamer. And he said he was playing Call of Duty one night, and somebody mentioned that he sounded like Napoleon Dynamite. And he's like, "I am Napoleon Dynamite." And the party was like, "No, you're not." And he started doing lines from the movie and sounded like him. He's like, I didn't know whether they believed me or not by the end of it, but he goes, I it was fun playing as Napoleon Dynamite, playing Call of Duty.
Gosh.
he was having
shoot me.
Yeah, he was having so much fun with it, and he's like, I don't know if the guys believe me by the time I was done, but I assume they
That's
did.
hilarious.
Could you imagine he plays Xbox, by the way, but could you imagine playing Call of Duty and having fucking Napoleon Dynamite on the other end?
I would totally do that.
Well, I wonder if they have contract things, because they might be recording
Who's going to know, you know?
But
you could just say, it's not me.
I mean,
some random dude.
They could check back your name, your online name back to you.
No one's going to do that.
So,
but yeah, I would totally fuck with people.
Yeah. So that's a cool story. You actually sent out, because you were way better than I was in sending out people we want to interview. Who have we asked? We've not been approved for anything, so nothing is set in stone. But these are the ones.
Well, we got an okay. We just haven't got any times yet.
Yes.
So good old Jerry,
who we worked with last year,
PR runner for Wizard World, super nice guy. Jerry emailed us out and said, basically, here's everyone that's going. Here's a list of people you cannot interview. Who do you want from the people that are left? And unfortunately, Jon Heder was on the cannot interview list, as were Jason Momoa, who's supposed to be there. It's weird that he's not showing up in that list, because Jason Momoa is
I don't know who that is.
He is Aquaman / the evil dude in Game of Thrones, the Dothraki. Dude who I believe he died. Spoiler, it's Game of Thrones, they all die. Yeah, so we are supposedly, if all being well, going to be interviewing Sean Bean, which I've already discussed as being very exciting for me, because I've grown up with Sean Bean. He was the star of a show called Sharp back home, which was a really popular show that my parents used to watch. But also, of course, Lord of the Rings. I like Lord of the Rings a lot. And Game of Thrones. But he was also the star of Silent Hill, the original Silent Hill movie, which is actually pretty good. So that's why I'm like using that as a tie-in to get to interview him. I'm actually going to be talking to him about Silent Hill more than anything else. So Sean Bean, I am nervous about walking up to him, as I mentioned to you earlier, because my natural inclination when talking to a celebrity is to refer to them as Mr. Somebody, like Mr. Ryan. When I talk to Matt Ryan, I do not want to walk up to him and say, Mr. Bean, may I talk to you? Because I just don't think that's going to work out great. So Sean Bean. Sean Astin is the other one. He is, of course, again, from Lord of the Rings. He was Sam, Frodo's loyal companion, but also in Stranger Things 2, and pretty huge part of Stranger Things 2. Apparently, his role was supposed to be a lot smaller, but they just loved what he was doing so much, they gave him a lot more time and made him an integral part of the show, basically. So Sean Astin, really excited to talk to him. Potentially going to talk to him about the PlayStation VR Stranger Things experience and see if he had a chance to play it or not. And just in general, just like good times. And then he was also in The Goonies. So he was Mikey in The Goonies, in case you didn't know that. That's a fun factoid. Billy Boyd, who is Pippin in Lord of the Rings.
I recognize what he looked like. I just never.
He's got one of those faces. Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. He's a Scottish dude. Has a lot of stuff that he did back home, obviously. But the most famous thing he ever did, Hollywood-wise, was Pippin in Lord of the Rings. Super nice guy. I just think he's going to be fun to talk to. And lastly, Bonnie Wright. Bonnie Wright being Ginny Weasley from Harry Potter. Mostly I requested her because A, I could, and B, you're a Harry Potter fan.
Yes.
And I like Harry Potter too. So
she's had to voice something in a video game. We'll find a way to tie it in.
Yeah, so also, that's the thing. All of these people have had to do their own voices in a video game, so we can tie them in somehow to the video game world.
But let's be honest, sometimes
we just like interviewing people. Yeah.
We have our... We have selfish intent sometimes.
Totally selfish reasons to interview celebrities that you like. Why not? Yeah.
Speaking of selfish people that we like to hang out with, or selfishly, they're not selfish. We're selfish for wanting to hang out with them all the time.
We are selfishly addicted to them.
Yes. Thousand Faces Cosplay, like I said, is going to be there, and I'm going to read their blurb on here. Thousand Faces Cosplay donates all proceeds from their print sales, which we have quite a few, to animal-focused charities such as 10th Life Cat Shelter and Endangered Wolf Center in Eureka, Missouri. Lauren and Ethan are a husband-wife duo who make up Thousand Faces Cosplay. They are performers and bodybuilders who use theatrics and fitness to bring their beloved characters to life for you at a convention. Thousand Faces Cosplay believes in portraying the characters they cosplay as much as possible, putting an even higher emphasis on performance aspect than sometimes the costume. If this means learning a fictional language like Dothraki for Kai Drago? I don't know.
He's Jason Momoa. That's the character that he plays.
Or High Valerian for fucking Daenerys. Don't know who that is.
Where are you looking right now? Move your hand. Dothraki for Kai Drago or High Valerian for Daenerys.
That's it. Or learning accent for Merida. I know who that is. Jon Snow or Harley Quinn. Shaving Ethan's head for Krieg. Growing a mohawk for Zangief. Practicing new movement patterns for Tiny Tina. Or totally altering diet and workout plans in order to get shredded for Vega and Cammy. They do it. We love these two. Like, it's funny because when I met them the first time, I had no idea who they were. When I met them at Indie PopCon,
you had no idea who their characters were, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we? They weren't. Were they? They weren't at Wizard World last year, I don't believe. Because you didn't. Did you meet them at Wizard World?
They were.
Okay. Because it's funny because I found them at Indie PopCon.
We interviewed them, but we didn't do any stage thing with them. Yeah.
That's where you're like, hey, by the way, you didn't know who you were. Yeah, I remember that now.
Because they were. She was Tiny Tina. She was terrifying.
Yes.
Yep.
That's how I know Lauren, and it's funny now because I know her. Obviously, on a more personal level, like her outside of cosplay, and it's just like she is not that person at all, which is really crazy.
She has a switch that she flicks in her brain.
Same with Ethan. I think Ethan a lot of times is more relaxed. Like she gets
more personable.
She gets way more into character for it. But it's quite entertaining when you watch it. We did a thing with her as Harley Quinn at Indie PopCon last year. We're waiting to see. We're gonna ask them what they're doing this year. Get some sneak peeks. Like I said, we want to do something with them because we love them and they're a lot of fun to hang with. And we think what they're doing is really cool. And then all their proceeds go to 10th Life and or Endangered Wolf Center, which I knew they did 10th Life. I didn't know Endangered Wolf Center. So I'm excited about that. I love those two to death. They just happen to live in the St. Louis area. We just happen to be here as well, and
one of those stars aligning type situations.
It was one of those moments too, where like I don't know if I told you this story yet, but somebody I can't remember who it was, but somebody sent me a message on Facebook, or commented on something on Facebook that I posted of like, "Hey, here's our thing with Thousand Faces Cosplay," and they're like, "You know them?" I was like, I met them. Like we talk. Yeah, I would consider us friends or acquaintances. I don't like they don't come over and play video games with us, but I'm sure if we asked them to be on the show, they would. Or if they wanted to come over and play video games, they would. They're too busy in the gym. We're fat and we're fat and they're fit.
More motivated than we are.
But it's funny because like to me, not that I don't think of them in like a high because they have like over 10,000 followers on Facebook and all this kind of stuff, but like. They're just Lauren and Ethan. They do cosplay that's really cool, but there's apparently people that are like, oh my God, they're my favorite. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's cool. Speaking of which, there's a Harley Quinn over there, and there's Tiny Tina up there. I have Harley Quinn in my house.
Well, that's the deal that we struck with them, and I'll talk about it more on my section. But yeah, we struck a deal with them last time to get Harley to do things, and
hoping to do it again because it was a lot of fun. I think Lauren enjoyed it as well.
Oh yeah.
Ethan enjoyed our reation and her reaction to it, and then he saw the video and he enjoyed it as well. It was funny because
that's still one of their most viewed videos.
Yeah, they were. My favorite line at the end of it, and we'll get into it, was, I thought I had no shame. That's my favorite line of all time. Yeah, they're going to be there. A lot of other artists are going to be there. A couple artists from Rick and Morty I saw are going to be there. Obviously, comic book artists. And a few other familiar faces, artist-wise, will be in Artist Alley, so maybe we'll catch back up with them. But yeah,
there'll be some devs there, too, hopefully.
Hopefully.
They don't tend to have a lot of them there.
The gaming kind of has sucked last year and the year before. It was all right, but it's slowly shrinking, which kind of scares me. They did have the Wizard World Gaming, which I don't know if they're doing.
Well, the nice part about gaming for us is that obviously, A, we're a gaming channel, but B, we sort of, on a whim one day, decided that we could make our interviews and everything so much more exciting if we could bring an Elgato with us and capture footage. So we've been in the habit of doing that since in every con that we've been to. So this will be no different, where hopefully we'll get a couple devs there where we can capture some game footage, get a good interview, splice it all together, and once again, have some good indie game stuff for the channel. So.
Never gets done when the URL doesn't work. To their website.
So yeah,
but I'm sure there'll be somebody there. There always is. And then obviously panels. They haven't really scheduled for anything. I believe again from talking behind the scenes, Lauren and Ethan I believe do have a panel or will be hosting panels. I don't know kind of what they're doing with it, but I know they are part of panels.
Yeah.
And then you're obviously gonna have the celebrity ones. You're gonna have the artist ones. Various different ones. I just like going to cons. Cons are always fun. It's the fun part of doing what we do. We sit in a basement literally in the same spot for like 4 hours and just talk to a camera in a freezing basement right now.
Yeah, it's one of the, I mean, like I said, I'll get into it in more detail in a little bit here, but Yeah, cons are definitely... They're not necessarily something that is super prevalent to what we do, because like our YouTube channel is essentially indie games and VR games and us. So the con part, I guess, falls in the us category because it's, I mean, we do obviously interview indie developers.
Like we said, we have selfish reasons for some of these things.
Yeah, and we do, like, if we find VR at these places, we will talk to those guys. But at the same time, like, primarily, we just get a kick out of going and talking to randos. And
we're just giant nerds. I think it's funny, though, because, like, I think, no offense, but you're definitely a way more traditional nerd and bigger nerd than I am when it comes to like comic books and all that kind of like I'm more of a, and I've probably said this before, but I'm more of a mainstream like
pop culture.
Yeah, I'm definitely not big in it. But when the things I'm into, I feel like for me, Western cartoons, like I fucking love Western cartoons. Like I'm big into that kind of stuff, and I prefer those kind of things versus you're in anime, comic books, like the stereotypical things you think about that are at conventions. So
Otaku.
I like having you there because you can tell me who people are. Yeah, like who's that? But I would say I'm a Star Wars. You're fucking the guy from Bleach.
Yeah,
that's the best kind of comparison because I'm like, oh, that's the Green Power Ranger. No, that's so and so from Bleach.
Ichigo Kurosaki.
Yeah, there you go, that guy. So I feel like that's the perfect like analogy of us in a nutshell.
Yep.
But I'm excited. Wizard World is always a good time. It's obviously local, so it's cheaper on us, and the fact that we're getting passes.
I'm only worried this year actually about the fact that it's in February 2nd, because right now with this fucking winter shit that's going on.
Yeah, you want to cosplay as a fucking Jedi, you're gonna have no legs. Well, I'm not shaving my legs.
Last time we could take the train in, if you remember. Like we parked our car at the train station and we took the train all the way in. I don't know if we could do that this year because it's gonna be like colder than a witch's tit. I don't know.
You can still take the train in. They don't stop the train when it gets cold.
Yeah, but I don't know how easy it's going to be for us to lug all this shit around in the freezing cold. Like, I'm worried about our camera batteries and everything. I don't know. Like, I'm just, we'll figure something out, I'm sure. Last time, like,
we'll
Dave
just buy a pizza. We'll just buy a Pizza Hut oven thing to put it in.
Yeah, or we'll just eat Pizza Hut on the way there
and just sit
nice
on top.
Cozy.
Yeah, sit on top.
Yeah, God, now I want Pizza Hut. Damn it.
I had that last night. That was my
so
dinner.
Hungry.
Yeah, I've been trying to eat better, but I had a cheat night last night, and it was delicious. But yeah, I'm excited for Wizard World. We applied for when the window opened for press passes. They officially got back to us. I got the email when I woke up. Actually, I got a bunch of emails that morning about a few things. I was like, ooh. And I was like, hey, I got this. And you're like, oh, cool. And you're like, I got it too. I was like, thank God.
It would suck if they like approved you and didn't approve me. Yeah.
Like, haha, this Tom guy. No, but I feel like I have to say, and last year was our first time doing official press, and I mean, in the vlog, I moaned a little bit about kind of how it was run because I think it's fair to complain that we were told multiple different things from different people. But
you're just a moaner in general.
I also was ready to go. Like, that's the thing is, like, get on the floor, do you? Because I know having that half an hour on the floor before everybody else is big when it comes to connecting. Like, you saw at Indie PopCon where we can go in and, like, set things up before people get there.
Yeah.
It makes a world of difference. Like, Ethan, we wouldn't have got if we didn't get in early. 2 years ago, I guess now.
Crank Ethan. Ethan.
Yeah, Crank. I wouldn't have gotten Wade if I didn't get in early, like that kind of thing. So those are the reasons, like from a business business standpoint, which is why I'm cranky, trying to get in and ready to go, and then obviously you just get in the groove and start. But I think we covered it fairly well with the things we had. I think the stuff we did was really well done. I'm sure we're going to get into some of it in your section, but the interviews, as much as we stood around and waited, we got what we wanted in the end. So
yeah, it's I'm excited for this year. You know, we have Wizard World coming up here very shortly, but then we also still have Indie PopCon.
We have a whiteboard off screen that says Wizard World STL, Indie PopCon, and I don't even know what the fuck E3 is yet. We should probably put dates up there.
Yeah. E3, that's more for, like, I don't know how we're going to cover that yet, but
we didn't do anything last year.
Yeah,
we might just live.
I don't know. It's fun. I mean, mostly I'm just keeping an eye on trailers and stuff. It's been my usual thing for.
Yeah.
For
well, that now with the press contacts for us make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So like, hey,
but,
remember last year? Like, hey, can we get this? Here's everything. We're like, oh shit, go.
Yeah, and last time the login for PlayStation stuff was so simple as well. Like,
don't say it.
I won't say it on air, but
it was so dumb.
I think I'd be able to guess it this year, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're really excited to be invited as official press to Wizard World this year, and we're still waiting for our indie.
The press window I don't think is open yet for Indie PopCon. I haven't
Right.
looked recently.
But we're excited.
But Wizard World is
excited to
2
go.
weeks away.
2 weeks.
A bunch of text messages.
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks away. I'm excited about it. I love, like I said, the con environment. The atmosphere is always
It's a
fun.
good time. It's
And-
always positive.
And the thing with this is like, I'm gonna be honest. I like Indie PopCon way more than I like Wizard World, just because it goes way more with gaming and more of what I'm into. But Wizard World's fun because it's here.
Yeah.
There's also a couple other ones that I'm looking into. Anime St. Louis is one. There's also a Comic-Con happening in St. Charles. There's another one. So there's a few other ones locally, because way cheaper to go to a convention in St. Louis than it is to go out of the state.
Yeah.
So that being said, if you guys want to help us go to more conventions, if you support us on Patreon at patreon.com/level2gamersstl, that'll help. Or there is, if when we're streaming, you can tip us. We've got a tip link in there. We are also updating Patreon at some point. We plan on doing. We keep saying it.
About it.
We plan on doing it at some point. I'm thinking we're just going to sit down one day. Maybe I'll come over earlier. We just get it done. But we plan on doing it at some point. So that being said, that's Wizard World 2018. Let's go into your what is it? Great moment of gaming.
Great moments in gaming history, and that is gonna be the birth, actually, of a genre which is my favorite genre of gaming, and something that you are hot and cold on. And that is
hot and you're cold. You're yes and you're no. You're in and you're out. You're up and you're down. That song's actually about sex.
Wow, what the fuck?
You're hot, then you're cold. You're yes, then you're no. You're in, then you're out. You're up and you're down. You're wrong when it's right. It's black when it's white. You're hot, we make up.
I don't think that's right. I think
you're pissed, we break up. You don't really want to. The only reason I know this song is I don't know the Katy Perry version. There's a band, I can't think of their name right now. Sorry for not remembering your name. I want to say A Smile from the Trenches that covers it, and I fucking love. It's like one of those heavy metal covers.
That's a cool name.
So yeah, they didn't last very long.
All right,
Smile Empty Soul is a good band too.
The great moment in gaming history this week is a discussion of the history of the first-person shooter, because it's an important genre in gaming, and I think it instantly, when it started to take off, became one of the more immersive ways to play video games. Obviously, the early days of that genre, everything was still super pixelated. Like, we didn't have the graphical prowess that we have now, so you weren't that immersed. But at the same time, it still felt kind of interesting as a movement style and very different to anything that had come before it. So there's about 43 years of history in the first-person shooter, so I'm going to narrow it down a little bit. But I wanted to talk about it. So if I was to ask you what you thought the first-person shooter, or first-person, like, perspective game was, where would you start without looking at my screen?
Well, I was gonna say, I was looking at that and I was like, that looks like the Minesweeper maze. There's two games that come to mind, and I don't know what year they came out. There's obviously Doom is the one that popularized it, but I know it's probably not the first, but it's the one that kind of, it's like the Halo that made it work. Halo made it work on consoles. It's the one that people remember on PC. The other one I would think of, there's a Star Wars game back in the day where you're in a spaceship. That's a first-person perspective shooter.
I remember that.
And my thought was Star Wars was from the 70s. Video games, kind of the 80s is when it kind of really took off. So
you're using science to figure this out.
That's my guess, but I don't think either of those are right.
It was a solid guess. So in 1974, there were two
pre-Star
particular
Wars
games. That was Maze War and Spasm. Which is an odd name for a video game. But they basically invented the first-person game. So here's a little bit of news about those. The earliest examples of first-person go back to the beginnings of video games themselves. Around 1974, two early developers... God damn this thing. I keep getting this weird pop-up, and I can't get rid of it. I hate it. So two early developers, Steve Colley and Jim Bowery, worked on separate titles that were undeniably influential to the future of gaming. First, there was Colley's Maze War, a simple black and white puzzle game where players would wander through a maze looking for other avatars, represented by floating eyeballs. When you saw another eyeball, you could shoot it to gain points. So the very first first-person game had you shooting eyeballs, which I think is interesting. This may sound like brain-dead level simplicity, but for the early 70s, just about all of these things, the first-person view, the avatars, its in-game level map, were firsts. Around the same time, Bowery debuted Spasm, a space flight simulator also set in the first-person view. Like Maze War, movements were slow and simple, and turns could only be done in 90-degree angles. Unfortunately, neither game was released commercially. Instead, they were more like radical projects shown off to select university students. So it's not like you would have heard of these games specifically because they never really got a full release.
Yeah.
But still.
Well, it's like back in the day, a lot of things were made in like MIT.
Right.
Like Pong was started.
Stuff, yeah.
Pong was started inside of science lab somewhere, and it was never meant to be a video game. But then somebody realized that they could.
I think
make it a video game
even before video games were a thing. And I think Pong largely came out of like an oscillating machine,
Yep.
if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Like the Russians figured out a way to play a video game on an oscillator, which is
when you don't want to do your job.
when you're that bored, that's what happens. In the 1980s, first-person shooters became commercialized, and Battlezone gave life to the FPS. And I think this is particularly poignant because, of course, Battlezone is also available for PSVR. Everyday folk wouldn't get their first shot at first-person shooters until the early 80s, when a handful of titles influenced by the early concepts provided by Maze War and Spasm launched in arcades. The most popular of these was 1980's Battlezone, a tank combat sim that has now been reborn in PlayStation VR. Back then, it used to be black and green vector graphics, basic background environmental effects like an erupting volcano, and addictive score-based gameplay centered on shooting up as many enemy vehicles as possible. As a result, it would remain popular with arcade-going high-score chasers for many years. So Battlezone, is for those people that have only played the PSVR version and wondered about the original, well, it was one of the granddaddies of commercialized FPS games. So that was interesting.
And it was green and black line, or green lines with black
green
background.
Vectors, yeah. 1987, home computing changes the rules as MIDI Maze hints at future greatness. Besides Battlezone, the majority of other 80s shooters just weren't ready for prime time yet. The technology wasn't quite there, especially at home. The developers were still fumbling around with how to best use this relatively unknown genre. There were a few successes with light gun peripherals, like Japanese developer Taito's Operation Wolf. Did you ever play that?
No.
I played that. But
I miss light guns, though.
It was terrible. But it wasn't until MIDI Maze released for the Atari ST in 1987 that first-person shooter games took their next step forward. MIDI Maze, released as Faceball 2000 for the Game Boy in 1991, Faceball, was a goofy yet charming game featuring big yellow murderous smiley faces as avatars. As far as gameplay went, MIDI Maze didn't do much different mechanically from other shooters, but it was notable for being the first legitimately robust multiplayer 3D shooter for an accessible home platform. It required a complicated LAN setup, yes, but MIDI Maze gave players the first hint at just how vital multiplayer FPS would eventually become. And then we run into the Eureka moment, as they put it, which is pre-Doom, but the predecessor to Doom.
Yeah, I forgot about this.
Wolfenstein 3D, fathers modern shooters. Throughout the late 80s and early 90s, Texas dev ID Software had worked on a handful of first-person shooters that gradually improved with each passing release. Games like Hovertank 3D and Catacomb 3D saw John Carmack and company experiment with new technological advancements, including fully realized 3D environments. But when ID released Wolfenstein 3D for the PC in 1992, it changed first-person shooters forever.
It's id Software.
Is it? I always call it ID.
Nope, it's id. There's no periods.
Wolfenstein was a revelation. Environments and character models were impressive for its time, and it ran more smoothly than any 3D shooter that had come before it. Because of this, id was able to craft a shooter that mixed the first-person perspective, now finally beginning to come into its own, with the ultra-fast pace of many third-person action games in arcades at the time. This effectively popularized the run-and-gun style shooter, making it accessible to all. It popularized many aspects of shooters that are taken for granted nowadays, like health and ammo packs, the ability to freely select from multiple weapons with a variety of different combat purposes, and being able to save your progress at any point. Oh, and it let you kill Hitler. Mecha Hitler.
So I was off by a year.
You were, because in 1993, Doom and the rise of the connected co-op and competitive multiplayer happened. Through Wolfenstein, although Wolfenstein was a huge success, it cemented its iconic status with the 1993 release of Doom. Simply put, Doom is one of the most important games ever made. It improvised upon just about every aspect of Wolfenstein 3D and established first-person shooters as a genre that would last well into the future.
So, id Software made both Wolfenstein and
Correct.
Doom. They fucking dominated that
owned FPS,
that era.
Yeah. Doom looked better, played better, blew out level design in every direction, and gave players more things to do than any shooter ever had. Its 3D environments were rich and filled with now iconic demonic monsters, and its slick, fast, deceptively strategic play vastly improved on Wolfenstein's already successful run-and-gun gameplay template. It sported a wide variety of usable weapons, from the chainsaw to the now infamous BFG, which stands for Big Fucking Gun, by the way. It also provided users with Doom WODs, which allowed players to create levels and mod the game to their heart's content. Oh, and it also featured cooperative and deathmatch multiplayer by way of LAN or dial-in connections. To say these non-campaign modes were popular would be an immense understatement, as Doom was the first FPS to successfully foster the kind of massive scale user base so many shooters still seek today.
People still play Doom.
I played Doom in, there was a little store in my
Doom.
town that was renting video games. But the guy basically rented time with consoles. So we had all these consoles set up, and people would pay to come in and play whatever for like half an hour, or what have you. And we got a copy of Doom, and we were his helpers. I got a copy of Doom. And after hours, when the store was closed, we played it for the first time. Blew my fucking mind, man. It was just like, I was like, what is this? Like, because I'd not really played PC, let alone this game. But this was like way, way, way back in the day. So I do remember fondly Doom.
Here comes the copycats, PUBG, everybody.
1995, the market floods with Doom copycats, but Marathon, Duke Nukem, and others hold their own. Every major PC game maker wanted their own Doom, and the vast majority of shooters released after 1993 wanted to be Doom. These clones flooded the market for a while. In fact, before it was fully cemented as a genre in its own right, Doom clone was the de facto term for any first-person shooter. That's very true.
It's like Metroidvania.
Yeah. But a few classics came out of this sea of copycats. One of the earliest came in 1994 when a little developer named Bungie released the first game in its eventual Marathon trilogy, focusing around a relatively nuanced sci-fi plot with an expansive multiplayer suite. The Mac-exclusive shooter was a unique hit and also cemented the conceits that Bungie would later build upon with Halo and Destiny. The following year brought Star Wars Dark Forces, which allowed players to look up and down in a fully 3D environment. For the period, a big deal in terms of immersion environmental design, as well as delivering levels that were more in-depth than the typical game at the time. Finally, there was 1993's Duke Nukem 3D, which had attitude. Its raunchy sense of humor, tight, memorable action, and highly interactive, relatively realistic level settings gave it a true personality that resonated with millions of shooting fans. It even spawned a sequel 15 years later, which was, well, it was. Let's leave it at that. 1996.
Hold on. I'm gonna find.
What are you doing? You gonna find a Duke Nukem thing? Hail to the king, baby. All right.
I'm working on it.
You work on that. Let me know when you're ready. 1996.
Here you go.
Quake puts multiplayer at the forefront.
Hail to the king, baby.
As its software lay waste to pretenders. While the likes of Marathon and Duke Nukem 3D were very much high-quality titles, FPS fans in the mid-90s knew that id was still king of the genre. So when the now legendary developer's next game, Quake, was released, significantly the first major polygon-driven FPS available at home, meaning hitherto an imagined jump forward in terms of realism, level design, interactivity, and performance, fans promptly went bananas. Quake had all the impressive, immersive, and immediate aspects of its spiritual predecessors, but this time out there was a staggering step up. Technology and in terms of multiplayer that would inform the shape of FPS ever more. Quake's single-player mode is great, fast, frantic, brutal, kinetic, and very smart indeed, but after Doom, it knew that multiplayer was where the long-term life of shooters resided. Thus, it jumped into the market early with a multitude of deathmatch modes and special multiplayer support features like clans and modding abilities. Quake's progressive physics-driven nuance rapidly turned up all kinds of hidden quirks and gameplay tricks, like rocket jumping and strafe jumping. Once harnessed by the game's rabid community, fan passion and game versatility combined to turn Quake into one of the first legitimate esports. It still has a giant annual convention / LAN party named after it, QuakeCon, where all the biggest reveals from id and parent company Bethesda happen. Multiple sequels were later released, with the legendary and still unbeaten Quake 3 Arena focusing on nothing but multiplayer, with spiritual follow-ups Quake Live and the upcoming Quake Champions continuing to carry the multiplayer torch. It's clear that Quake's original blend of immediacy and depth really, really got it right.
I just want to say how awesome it is that, like, the clones came out, and id kind of was like, oh, holding my beer and came back. Because it could have been easy for them to be like, because we've said it before, you don't necessarily want to be the first, you want to be the best. And it sounds, granted, while Quake or Doom wasn't, Wolfenstein and Doom weren't really probably the first, I'm sure there's others that they were the first commercially successful ones, and then you have people copy them, and then you get that weird feeling of like, are they going to lose money because of this? So them coming back and saying, "Oh fuck, watch this."
No, we got a trick up our sleeves.
Yeah, it's nice from a company standpoint that they're still going today. So
if you weren't a part of the Doom train or the Quake train,
I was not
or any of those that I was a member of, then probably your first game that you remember
during that train, I was 4 years old.
In 1997. GoldenEye 007 legitimizes console shooters in the cultural crossover that captures a generation.
This was the first shooter I ever played.
Yeah, for a lot of people it was.
Because I remember the controversy at the time for me, because in 97 I was 6 years old, was when you kill somebody, the blood comes up on the screen, and my mom had a little bit of an issue with that, but it wasn't too bad.
No,
so
it wasn't.
This is the first-person shooter I ever played.
You've probably noticed that all the FPS titles we've discussed have been for either arcades or PC. There's a reason for this. Console shooters were never really at the forefront of the genre, largely due to the limitations of early controllers versus the almighty keyboard and mouse setup. That changed in August of 1997 when Rare's GoldenEye 007 took James Bond license and wrapped it around an impeccably designed console-optimized FPS. Released on Nintendo 64, GoldenEye almost exclusively tapped into a console market that had not yet gotten FPS fever like its PC counterpart. It had excellent level design in single player, a now legendary 4-player local multiplayer mode, a cast of iconic Bond characters, and an engaging shift away from the run-and-gun action scene in Doom and Wolfenstein, putting more methodical, option-fueled play at the front. GoldenEye moved more slowly and realistically, even putting an emphasis on stealth gameplay previously unexplored by the genre's greats to date.
How many times do you die from proximity mines in the bathroom?
A lot.
We all know that one.
And I was Oddjob, but let me explain this, right? I was Oddjob because A, he was my favorite character in the movies, and B, he's the shortest player, and I was always the shortest player.
I was Oddjob because I sucked at first-person shooters.
I didn't even know there was I had an advantage by being short. I figured that people were just bad at it. But yeah, I was always Oddjob. So probably nowadays people hate me for that. 1998, Half-Life takes narrative to a new level as Unreal Tournament cements PC at the home of the FPS. Most console developers had a hard time catching up to Rare's platform dominance. Instead, the best shooters of the late 90s still resided on PC. 1998's Half-Life, for example, was the first game from developer Valve. Deeply cinematic, superbly written and designed, and focused on a solo campaign driven by deep environmental interactivity and staggeringly life-challenging enemy AI, Half-Life effectively did for the craft of single-player FPS what Quake did for multiplayer. Again, new standards were set. In stark contrast, the following year saw the release of Epic's Unreal Tournament, its aforementioned Quake 3 Arena, and the Half-Life mod Counter-Strike, all of which focus on their online components. Unreal Tournament and Quake were hectic and ultra-fast-paced titles that had almost no regard for single-player, and Counter-Strike went from user-made mod to widespread phenomenon thanks to its simple yet tactical premise, brutal difficulty, and intensely dedicated player
1998, we are now in 2018.
And I just started
Just think
playing.
about that.
Yeah. And even aside from the obvious big hitters, plenty of other wonderful and increasingly diverse PC FPS were released during this period, from Star Siege Tribes to Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six to the RPG-tinged System Shock 2 by BioWare. Is it BioWare? I made up the BioWare thing. It's by the BioShock guys. Sorry, not fucking BioWare.
I was like, wait.
Making the turn of the century a golden age for keyboard and mouse shooting. Truly the days of the Doom clone were well behind us. The genre now matured into a wide, ever-expanding, legitimate creative ecosystem. And then in 2001...
This is the first-person shooter I owned.
Halo kickstarts console shooters for good and ushers in a new era of complex lore and sequels.
Before you get into this, I've got a story before the blurb of...
Go ahead.
So, back in the day, you knew it was Sony, it was Nintendo, and fucking Microsoft decides, hey, let's do this shit. And I picked the Xbox because I wanted to become a more mature gamer. You saw how that went. And I didn't like... To me, Sony's... And I've said this before on the channel, but to me, Sony's always been a weird Japanese console. Like, it has weird Japanese games. Never was a fan of that art style. Never was a fan of really those games. I thought of fighters, that kind of thing. Xbox was the fucking America on steroids, where you got your shooters, you got your sports games. Like, it touted itself as brash and in your face versus Sony was more like, hey, we're going to tell some whimsical stories over here. And I remember getting the Xbox for my birthday. It was $800 Canadian. My sister got a trampoline the same year, to give you an idea of like price point.
Nobody buys trampolines anymore. You know?
No.
It's weird, right?
We had a net on ours too, so you couldn't fall out. But I remember getting my Xbox and getting Halo, and that was like the moment where like I went from, because I played video games growing up on the N64 and like I said, casually, but this was the moment where like I knew I was going to stay with video games, and this is probably the first game I put hundreds of hours into without realizing it. So, and I played the Pillar of Autumn level more times than I care to count, because I've restarted that game. So I think I finished the original Halo. I never finished the other two stories because I played with my friend. So we finished.
I finished all three of the first.
I didn't. I didn't care about stories. I was multiplayer was awesome.
Yeah, I bought them just because I'd never played them.
Yeah.
The turn of the century also brought a new generation of consoles that were finally capable of running FPS smoothly and effectively. By 2001, there weren't many console shooters, time splitters, and Perfect Dark aside, that could be considered flagship, high-quality titles. Microsoft changed this by buying Bungie and helping transform its next project, a real-time strategy game called Halo, into one of the most influential franchises ever. Halo essentially did for console shooters what Doom did for the genre on PC. Its strong narrative, free-flowing and cinematic gameplay, advanced enemy AI, and possibly most importantly, the best, most convincing translation of FPS controls to a twin-stick controller all helped Halo to become the only game you needed on Xbox. Future installments alongside Microsoft's Xbox Live service would add to one of the deepest multiplayer components ever seen on console. In fact, Halo 3 still remains one of the best multiplayer shooters around, over a decade after it was originally released.
So in the Pillar of Autumn sequence at the beginning, there's one where you see, because you have the little, I can't remember the name of the aliens are, but you have the little dudes that you shoot, and then the first big guy comes out like of a door. I remember being so fucking scared when he came out there. I was like, oh shit, because you're used to, you're like, oh, I can kill the little guys, and this big guy comes out, you're like, what do I do? But it was I love that game, and it's funny because they now have the advanced or the Master Chief edition where you can look at the graphics then versus now, and you're
I love that they brought those servers back online for that too.
You're like, oh, this looked good. Now it doesn't. Everything's dark because that was a limitation.
Following up Halo in 2002, console and PC shooters stand side by side as Metroid, Far Cry, and Battlefield blaze new paths. Like Doom before it, Halo seemed to convince the large majority of developers that making high-quality first-person shooters was the key to future success. The mid-2000s brought a wealth of excellent console shooters to go along with the continued, albeit slightly lessened stream of great PC ones. These included massive amounts of World War II shooters like Battlefield 1942 and Call of Duty.
Paint everything in that.
Highly anticipated sequels like Doom 3 and Half-Life 2, and new franchises like Far Cry and PlanetSide, among many others.
This is when video games started losing color.
One particularly noteworthy title was 2002's Metroid Prime for the GameCube. It transplanted Samus Aran's side-scrolling puzzle adventures into a modern FPS framework while still retaining the original game's feel and soul. Perhaps more importantly, though, it was one of the first popular FPS games to place a heavy emphasis on adventure game aspects like exploration and platforming rather than just shooting. Series fans and FPS fanatics fell for the game en masse, making it one of the most critically and commercially successful games ever released on the GameCube. 2007. Call of Duty Modern Warfare takes on Hollywood to become an entertainment behemoth. In 2007, one game set the standard against which all future FPS would be measured, or at least all FPS for a very long time. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. While the Call of Duty franchise was popular during its early days, hence the fast expansion of the World War II subgenre, Modern Warfare shook up the landscape by bringing the guns, the settings, and the scenarios bang up to date, and adding some truly unforgettable, brilliantly scripted missions to become one of the most rounded, loved shooters and games ever created. It wasn't just the campaign either. Modern Warfare brought some some truly innovative online features like customizable perks, leveling, and prestige, kickstarting and hooking a loyal and talented fan base that still plays the game today. All of this, combined with its fast, Twitch-heavy gameplay, also made Call of Duty the premium choice for esports and the dominant fixture in this gaming release calendar every year for almost a decade. Great game, Modern Warfare. You can't really praise it enough.
I've never played it.
You should play the remaster. It's good.
I played Modern Warfare 2. World at War and Modern Warfare 2 are the only Call of Duty games I played outside of Infinity.
I would argue that Modern Warfare was better than World at War.
Modern Warfare 2. World at War I gave to my brother and exchanged it for some other shooting game because I thought it was garbage, and he had no idea at the time that it was garbage, so I traded for that.
It wasn't garbage, it just wasn't as good as Modern Warfare.
Well, compared to, I want to say it was like Belgrade 1. No, it was was it Army 1, Army of 2?
Army of 2 was like a two-player third-person game.
I don't know. There was something I traded World at War for him, and it was the right decision to do. Okay. Maybe Brother in Arms. Maybe that was it. I don't know. There's some other shooting game that I enjoyed way more than World at War.
Fair enough. 2014, PS4 and Xbox One establish a games as a service as the FPS genre fulfills its, no pun intended, destiny. While the FPS genre undoubtedly improved bit after Modern Warfare, there wasn't a standout damn it.
Eureka moment until 2014 when Bungie partnered with Activision, released Destiny, a console's FPS that's always online and fueled by community-driven co-op play and persistent MMO-style progress. Destiny was a hugely ambitious title when it first launched. While not always perfect in its first year and initially lacking in certain areas like explicit narrative, no shit, and content breadth, Destiny attracted a massive, fierce, loyal community filled with individuals who happily continue to put hundreds and thousands of hours into the game. Now vastly improved for its early days, when, despite its flaws, it's still good enough to win our Game of the Year award in 2014, Destiny's now a genre leader, a brilliant, nuanced, rich, and fine-tuned Goliath game of all other genres are drawing inspiration from in an attempt to replicate its enormous success. Meanwhile, Bungie has announced and released Destiny 2, which could well make a big evolutionary step forward in the unstoppable FPS genre.
Thank you for finishing that up. My phone just got a bunch of random adverts come up and I couldn't get to the end. Thank you.
Mine's been doing that too, and I don't know why.
It's so super annoying. So anyway, yeah, that's the kind of the tale, I guess, of first-person shooters through the history. I thought it was interesting because I was always under the impression that Wolfenstein 3D was the first ever FPS game, and then I went through reading this and I sort of learned about the Maze game and everything. And
well, I knew it wouldn't be the first just because it's the most commercially successful. It doesn't mean it's the first.
I know, but it was.
I didn't know what the first was.
Yeah, so I mean, the Maze game and everything, they weren't really for the general public's consumption, but it's good to know that those developers get the props that they deserve for bringing it that far. But it's nice to see those kind of pit stops on the way, things like GoldenEye and Halo, and kind of bringing us up to where we are now, where basically first-person shooters are synonymous.
You know what's crazy about that to me is it makes me realize how short of a time frame I've been gaming. Because like I said, GoldenEye was the first-person shooter I played, and I was 6 years old. And then Halo was the first one I owned, which was 2001, so I would have been 10 years old when that came out. And then there was, only 2 stops after that?
Yeah.
So,
I started with Doom. I never played Wolfenstein 3D. I remember it, but I never played it. Doom was the first one I played from the early FPS games, and that's the one that sort of cemented my love for the genre.
Yeah.
So, that's the history of FPS. Great moments in gaming. Hope you enjoyed that. Moving on, we're going to keep with the theme of Wizard World, and what I thought we'd do is we'd reminisce a little bit. We got a memory lane, because we, as we've kind of discussed before, cons are a weird thing for us because they don't seemingly fit into our channel as a whole, mostly because when we go to a con, we tend to have a lot of B-roll stuff. We walk around a lot. We talk to rando people.
We find devs if we can, but there's very few of those.
But it's rare that we get a hold of a dev. We'll interview artists and people that maybe we weren't. That aren't really something that we talk about a whole lot of other times on the channel. We interviewed a board game guy the one time, and we just we just kind of go with the flow on them, which I really like. But I wanted to talk about our history of it because you've been to more than I have, because you went to the original Wizard World, you went to the Indie PopCon before I went out to Indie PopCon, And it wasn't until the year after that we were kind of like, yeah, let's do this together because then we can get better footage and it'll work out better.
Yeah.
And then I came along for both of those.
Pull you along and be like, come on, Tom, we're doing this.
Yeah, and I was cool because like Wizard World last year was actually the first time I bothered to go to a Comic-Con of any kind. I've always like wanted to, but I've never really had the opportunity to. So
have you ever gone to any conventions outside, like not just nerd conventions, but any conventions before then? Because I used to do music with my dad. So my dad worked in music, or works in the music industry. So
I feel like I maybe did with school or something, but I don't actually remember like what it was.
Because I've gone to like NAMM, which is the world's largest music manufacturer one.
No,
so
I've never done anything like that.
That's all I've done. You know where they hold E3 in Anaheim? Like that is filled with music stuff. Like that's how big NAMM is. It's the same size as E3, essentially. That's
cool.
So I used to do that growing up, but I never really did cons of my own until.
I always had a dream of going to E3. It's still a dream. Less or so now than I think it was when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, E3 was just like Christmas for gamers.
Yeah.
But now
Christmas is year round.
Yeah. I still kind of want to go at some point.
I think the moment we get invited to go to E3 or GDC, like not that we apply, but somebody reaches out to us, will be the moment we're like, holy shit.
Yeah,
that's a goal.
Going to be a good one. But so let's talk about what we have done and why we do it. So when we go to a con, we switch modes, or more accurately, you switch modes.
You call it con mode.
You turn into Con Keegan.
It's called Get Shit Done Keegan.
Keek Con. And you basically become some kind of half monster hybrid where you are running around the place like a psycho, trying to get as many like shots as possible and talk to as many people as possible. And I think we're both better at doing that now, but initially it took me a minute to be able to catch up with you and your so a background before we go a little further is I've mentioned before, I've talked about it, I worked in music festivals, and to get interviews with any sort of band back in the day, you had to go hunt people down, and I have no issue doing that because I've done it. Worst thing they'll say is no. And odds are, if you talk to them in person, they probably won't say no. Yeah, like that's the thing I've learned with something
this,
we've learned, over the time, especially with our stuff as well, is a similar principle. The difficulty between a thing like Wizard World and Indie PopCon, though, like you pointed out succinctly last year, is that with Wizard World, it's like you actually have to try and get the organizers, the PR organizers, to find you time. Yeah. Whereas with Indie PopCon, they're just like, go stealth mode, ask, be polite. You're good. Which is
just don't do anything stupid.
Yeah, don't piss off the talent.
Yeah.
But I think cons are super important to us because, one, it's something that I think we're good at. I think our vlogs for cons are good. I think we always have a good time when we go. It's impossible to go to a con and not have a smile on your face. Even if you go
even when
there,
I'm cranky.
Yeah, I mean, cranky is one thing, but I feel like there's always like super happy shit happening everywhere that you go. Like everyone's dressed up as their favorite characters, everyone's laughing and smiling, the artists are all out in force, there's some incredible things to look at, there's lots of sights and sounds to absorb, especially the lower tier conferences like what we go to. It just like every little bit counts, and I think that as a channel we just kind of established that that's something that we enjoy doing, and I think that we're, like I said, we're pretty good at it. We've been hugely lucky in the people that we've managed to interview. Like you had pointed out before, we had Kevin Conroy, Lauren Lester, we had Michael Rooker. At Indie PopCon, we had Charlotte Chung for Diva.
And then before that, I had
Matt Ryan,
Bob Wade.
We had Ethan,
Mr. Ray Honda
for a little bit. We had Jared the Completionist for a little bit. And just like a lot of kind of like really interesting people that you run into that we can capture just a little bit of footage with. And that's the thing, when we go to interview somebody, we never really we don't go there with like a notepad full of 20 questions to ask them. We have like
we
4.
did with because we didn't even know we were going to interview Lauren Lester. Somebody's like, do you want to do it? Or Jerry was like, do you want to do it? And we're like, and we kind of looked at each other of like, let's try it and see what happens.
Yeah,
I knew nothing about him.
You
as
did
Robin
really well, considering that you knew nothing.
I don't know.
It doesn't show.
I don't follow Batman at all.
Right.
So I'm like, let's talk about Robin, and that's when you have him talk, because he's the one people are there to listen. Like with Kevin Conroy, we sat down and like, okay, for VR-centric or for game-centric questions, asking about has he played himself in VR? What was that experience like? And what's really interesting, if you look at the Kevin Conroy interview, I don't know if it shows or not, but at the time they're like, you've got 10 minutes, go. And it's like you're waiting, go, and back out. And that's what a lot of these are, and you're just waiting for your moment of opportunity. But like you said, I feel like personally I've done this enough that I can wing it extremely well. I do flub up like a lot of people, like telling Matt Ryan I don't know who the fuck he is. I'm honest though.
Well,
with people.
to be honest, I thought he was English and he was Welsh, so we all
you
fucked up
more
on that one, yeah. But yeah, so it's one of those things where, like you said, we have this kind of window of opportunity where you have to play skip rope with a celebrity, basically jump in, get your interview, get out. But then after you get that footage, like after you come back and you check it and you see it's there and the sound worked and everything's cool, you're just like, fuck, that was cool. You know what I mean? Like for those 5 to 10 minutes,
I think
you were building up to it and getting getting the actual footage is super nerve-wracking.
Yes.
I remember, whether you're a pro or not.
I remember at one point afterwards, after we did Kevin Conroy, I can't remember if it was on the train ride back home or what, but I was like, we interviewed Batman. Yeah. Like, I just interviewed Batman. And it's funny because, like I said, I don't really follow Batman, but I know the animated series. So I know, like, Kevin Conroy, like, for me, is the voice of Batman. I used to have a Batman game back in the day. But, like, if I could think of anybody who's Batman, like, he's Batman in my head because Christian Bale's not Batman. Who's the other? There's another guy who voice acted him in some other things, but like Kevin Conroy is my Batman. Yeah, is the best way to explain it. So I was like, even though I'm not a huge Batman fan, I know who Kevin Conroy is. I recognize the name, and it was actually quite fun talking about VR. Yeah, like that's the fun. Like one of the things we've talked about is coming up with questions that not everybody asks. You don't want to be like, so what do you enjoy gaming? What's your favorite game? Because that's very boring. You need to ask them something to get them on their toes. To get them off balance, so they're like, "Oh, this will get them more engaged in the conversation." Yeah. So
actually make it interesting.
Yeah, for them and for us, because then people.
And we're lucky in the fact that because we're so VR centric, that's a question we can ask pretty much anybody because it's a new media format. It's something people are interested in, and it's something that almost everyone has an opinion on, whether they tried it or not. So I think that's kind of a good point that you raised. But you know, outside of Kevin Conroy and you know, outside of Charlotte Chung and Matt Ryan and those guys, I really enjoy interviewing artists and cosplayers. We've tried it a couple different ways. So with the artists, usually like we'll find someone that we either like their art or we heard about them before or we think it's just like cool, and we'll go up and ask them. And there's not a single artist that's going to say no, please don't showcase my work for the internet to see. Yeah. So you know, we're usually very nice about it. We'll go up and say, hey, you know, we really like your stuff. Do you mind if we talk to you for a few minutes? Those guys I feel like you can get a bit of a better rapport with because A, you're less nervous because they're not a celebrity, but B,
I don't get celebrity nervous. I get don't look like an idiot nervous.
Right. Well, same difference for me. But you have a body of work that you can discuss while you're there with them as well. Like, you know, with a celebrity, you have to kind of think about like, okay, what's this guy been in? What questions has he probably heard before? Like, I'm not going to go up to Sean Bean and say, hey, I hope you don't die by the end of this interview because you die in every other movie that you're in. Like, that's, you know, that they've heard that stuff before. But with like the Ukiyo Pop, for example, like that was super fascinating, and that dude was super fascinating. So like everything that I'm learning about while we're discussing the pieces and stuff is new to me and interesting to me, and hopefully interesting to the people that are watching. Jim Ferguson's Make a Scene, that dude is a legend, and I have so much of his artwork in my house right now. That guy is just like, he was just a super chill guy. We just nerded out on movies.
I didn't even look.
I don't know. We nerded out on movies and we had a good time, and that's really cool. And then
I don't think he is, because then the guy sent him a Facebook message, and I think he's not doing Wizard World St. Louis for some reason.
Then, of course, you have the cosplayers. So we already talked about Ethan and Lauren for 1,000 Faces cosplay a little bit. But what we did the one year, I think it was Wizard World.
Yeah, we just set up in a corner.
We just set up in a corner somewhere, and we grabbed people as they were walking by. And
we made sure they were okay to be on camera. We didn't actually grab and pull them in.
A couple people broke into the interview session, and they... But yeah, we did try and pre-screen.
But we don't interview people that don't want to be on camera. True. Is what I'm saying. Like we asked their permission.
Except for maybe that one chick that Lauren interviewed Indie Popcorn.
Oh, that said she peed herself.
That peed herself.
Yeah, that was probably that of all the things I've done. There's maybe 2 or 3 moments that I've had either on camera or around camera that happened, but that is probably one of the weirdest ones I've been a part of.
Yeah. So you know, we would just post up and grab people and sort of say, hey, you know, do you mind if we talk to you a little bit about ABC? Really fun stuff, though, I think, comes from when you utilize your people that you know, like Lauren and Ethan. Like, I think, honestly, like, the most fun that we had for the entirety of our weekend
fucking chasing her around.
Yeah, at Indie PopCon was having Lauren go full Harley Quinn and just run around the show floor doing our job for us, interviewing just random people, but doing it as Harley Quinn because A, people engage with that character right away. They're more likely to open up. B, she's just a hoot wherever she goes. She's very funny, very like quick-witted. Regardless of which character she is, she's always very smart and on it. So there's no one that really gets the better of her in a conversation.
Yeah.
And, you know, she loves it. It shows that she loves being that character and having a role to play other than just walking around and looking like Harley Quinn. So, you know, we got some of the best footage we could have asked for by working with Lauren at Indie PopCon. That dance off that just kind of, the stars just aligned on that one a little bit. If you don't know what we're talking about, at Indie PopCon, we basically gave Lauren a microphone, and she was dressed as full old school Harley Quinn, and we said, "Okay, go." Yeah. And me and Keegan was cameraman, I was microphone
you're holding the cables,
guy.
yeah.
So as she's running around, and she's very healthy. And
there's 3-4 fat guys running by.
And she's like, she's
the fucking T-Rex. We're like, oh my
dinosaurs around the show floor, and we were like dying trying to catch up with her. But that footage is so fun, and then when we find this like random group of gentlemen that were just dancing outside the front entrance to the con, and we say, hey, do you think you could, you know, come up here and show them some moves? She was super nervous about it, but bless her heart, she jumped in, and it created one of our favorite moments where literally she got surrounded by dudes in spandex suits, all dancing at the same time.
And I think she enjoyed it too. Like I said earlier, my favorite quote from her when she was done out of Harley Quinn, she goes, "I thought I had no shame." But like, it's one of those things where, like, to me, that's what a con is about. Like. And we're very aware of how, I don't want to say how we use Lauren or Ethan or whatever, because we don't want to exploit them. We don't want to exploit them. We don't want to be like, oh, look, there's a pretty girl in a Harley Quinn costume. Every guys want to come up to her and talk to her. Like, we don't want to do that. But those moments of like, if she wasn't with us, that would not have happened. Yeah. And that's so cool of like all these things coming together and melding together. And then at the end, my favorite was the Joker pulls up. And like that was perfect, like ending to it.
It was
just like,
and the thing that I love about it most, honestly, is not just that we created that moment and filmed that moment, but that everyone there got to be a part of that moment. Because it wasn't just 1 or 2 people watching that happen. There was a massive crowd of like 50 people that surrounded us. They were all watching this dancing going on and this crazy ass moment. And it was just one of those things that I'm sure is going to stick with a lot of people as a fond memory when they think about Indie PopCon specifically for that year. So, you know, we got to do something that got us something that we wanted for the channel. Lauren got a lot of attention for her cause. And of course, we put in for donations everywhere that we could, and credit to her and them. And also, on a personal note, we also donated a bunch of money to the charity to allow that to happen. That was like kind of our stipulations. Hey, let us borrow Lauren and we'll give you some money.
Sounds weird.
Sounds weirder than it is. Money for charity. It's less weird.
We told them we would donate some for their 10th life.
But yeah, so it's, you know, so that moment was something that was created, the T-Rex chase. And there's people that responded to the video comments that were saying, I was there, I remember that T-Rex, and then the fucking T-Rex
was there. Yeah, he's like, that was me.
I had no idea you were chasing me. And so just so fun, and I love those bits and pieces that arise. There's definitely nerve-wracking moments. I mean, we did the panel at Indie PopCon, which was, for both of us, pretty nerve-wracking. You more than me, I think. I was pretty strung out at the time. But you were like super nervous about this panel. I was just kind of like, well, it's either going to be good or it's not. There's
then
nothing
the
we can
fucking
do.
doors opened.
And then, we go from thinking that we're not going to get like 5 people to show up to the entirety of the hall filling up, including a back row of people that have a combined sub count of several million.
Yeah.
On
I think the
YouTube.
lowest one back there at the time had 200,000.
Right.
And it's just like, oh.
So,
And then you go from being nervous and nobody being there to being nervous, like, I can't look stupid in front of all these people now.
Right.
Picture them in their underwear. Picture them in
it
their
was
underwear.
such a good moment for us and such a life-affirming kind of thing. Like, we would have never got to have done that if we didn't just put ourselves out there a little bit, or you put us out there specifically by offering to do it. But and then we met some really good people outside too. Like, we still talk to Colin from Nuts and Dalts and a few people that we met at the thing. Claridactyl, bless her heart, she's a sweetheart. And you get to meet these people that can change your life in various different ways, or at very least become a part of it.
I think one of the coolest things for me too, like with that panel thing, we talked to Ethan, we talked to Gerard beforehand, and that was literally spontaneity going out on. We're like, hey, can we ask you a quick question? You're a big YouTuber, we're doing a panel later. Like, we had that, I think I had that idea in the elevator or something. I can't remember where, but we grabbed them, was able to do it. They were cool about it. But
Thank God
Ethan,
for cell phone cameras.
one of the things that Ethan Crank said to me was, he goes, I was at this convention 1 year ago, and I was in the same room you guys were in, and a few people showed up. It was great. And then he was on the main stage the next year. Granted, he got connected with Markiplier, and that obviously helps. He's on tour right now with Markiplier. Like, that's going to help you get some credibility. But at the same time, like, hearing stories like that of, like, all of a sudden this shit just went poof, and he's like, what happened? And it gives you, as a creator, I don't want to say hope because that sounds super cheesy, but it's like, there is a reason we're doing this. Like, sometimes it sucks with the struggles of, like, why is this not working out? Why is that not working out? But moments like that will stick with you. And, I mean, I don't know, you probably don't know this, but Gerard has gone through some stuff recently legally because of the partner he used to have that is no longer with him and what he wanted to do there and all that kind of stuff. But it wouldn't have shown with the way he was acting and all that. Like, I don't know. It's just one of these things where you realize these are people too. Like, I always say whenever I met a musician, everybody's a person. Nobody's more special than anybody else. You're all people. But it does humanize it when that happens, when you have moments like that. So, yeah, the panel to me was incredible. It was nerve-wracking. I probably should have saved more time for questions, but I didn't. That's a lesson to learn for next time. But at the same time, like, you saw me up front. I wish hindsight you'd filmed me in the way I was acting before the panel. And then at one point you're like, I think those girls are waiting for our panel. I was like, no, they're not. Like, don't fucking do that to me. Like, I was just like, nope, shutting down. Like, nobody shows up. And then the room filled up, and I was like, oh God. But
it's one of those things where I think I'm at a place now where obviously I want this channel to get great success and for us to do big things and to be able to make it a living where this is all we do, and hopefully do it well and get better at it. But I think that even just with what we've done so far on the show, and we're coming up to our 3rd year anniversary.
Yes, February 5th.
But even just what we've done so far on the show, I'm super proud of. And I feel like I could like quit everything tomorrow and still be really proud of what we've achieved. But luckily, I don't have to, because we're still having fun.
Because we got Wizard World.
We got Wizard World. But we're still having fun. We've always had fun. There's been ups and downs, as with anything, but I think
and then personal life things come in.
Personal life has been kicking our ass a little bit.
I've opened up a little bit about it, but the last 6 months, but basically since Indie PopCon through, I would say probably December, and you can vouch for this, have been the worst 6 months of my life, hands down. And I went in 2018 with trying to be more happy, trying to have better optimistic. I've got some things that I've figured out in my personal life. I want to read, I believe you saw my post on Facebook. I want to read what I posted on my personal Facebook yesterday. And it says, my favorite part of level 2 is building it from scratch. I'm not riding on anyone's coattails to get where we are, which I put that because with my dad, I had a foot in the door, made it a lot easier. With time, hard work, and a bit of luck, Tom and myself have gone from people who just play video games to people who cover them. When we started, I never thought we'd get press passes or asked to be on a panel. We were 2 guys at the time in my apartment, but now in Tom's basement, who had no idea what they were doing and decided to try something to see what would happen. We've met cool people through level 2, both friends and celebrities, and we've had a blast doing it. While it's not as quick of a journey as I anticipated, it's been a worthwhile one. I have a best friend who puts up with my shit, amazing people who support us, looking at you, Drew, Jesse, Eric, and David, and many, many others. Thanks to all the people I've met online and had fun playing games with. Josh, it was funny, when Josh, Kat, Amy, and Jamie, and many more that I know I'm forgetting right now. It's been a wild and crazy adventure, but I'm hoping one day that this crazy hobby of ours will become a career. Thanks again to everyone for your support. We're coming up on 3 years, and it still seems surreal. And it's just one of those moments where it's just like, you sit back and, like you said, you look at what we've done, and you guys see what's in the camera. You don't see what happens behind the scenes of, like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing 99% of the time. And we have this philosophy that I feel like has kind of become the core of what we do, is just ask. Mm-hmm. And it's so dumb, but it's so true. So
don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah. If you're a content creator or anybody doing anything, the only way you'll know an answer is ask. Whether it's asking a girl on a date or asking for press passes or going anywhere, doing anything, like, just ask. You never know. Like, I asked for that game, and we're getting one shipped to us. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't reach out, because they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're doing. So
it's fascinating because you succinctly put in your Facebook post there, we went from nothing to just being guys that were brave enough to ask. And when we started asking was when we started getting, and when we started getting was when things really started taking off a little bit. And we just crossed the 1,200 subscriber barrier. And I know we don't talk about numbers a whole lot. I know that you don't really care anymore. But it's not so
I'm
much...
more engagement than
well,
numbers.
It's not so much just the fact that we have 1,200 subs. It's that we have more comments than we've ever had.
Yes.
We have more views than we've ever had. And views mean more to me than subs, because, like, you know, I know that half of those subs are probably bots or whatever. But when it comes to, like,
from back in the day when we got rated from some people that
they just forgot to unsub
different audiences.
But when you break it down and you look at the fact that we used to have such an inconsistency with the videos that we were putting out, and, like, one video could get 3 views, another one could get 500, depending on what it was, and it took us a really, really long time to get to a place that we are now, where almost every video is getting a decent amount of views. They definitely vary in what they get. You know, the podcasts are kind of like,
they seem to be
split.
Stable. They seem to be stable to at least.
They're stabilized,
consistent.
absolutely, because you have, like, the VR podcast is definitely our most popular because of the nicheness of VR. But we get, like, about 50 views upwards. We get 50 to 400 depending on what it is, but we never get less than 50. The indie and this one were usually in the region of like 20, 25. But again, you occasionally get one that just kind of blows up for whatever reason. Could be related to the content or what have you. And then we have, like, the reviews and the no commentary gameplay and the trailers and everything else that goes up. So, like, that's our standard day to day. The cons are for us. They're like, we love doing them. We love putting that stuff on the channel. It's so different to everything else that we do, but it's just kind of, I don't know. It's fascinating, and it's been a fun ride, man. And I'm looking forward to this year. I'm looking forward to going to these cons and getting this footage, and you know, whatever crazy moments that we get to arrive to from.
I think it's really funny because obviously we can look at. I don't look at analytics like I used to, and I say I don't care about numbers. That's not true, because innate as a human, you care about people watching. I don't care. Free not caring about numbers means I'm not obsessing over them. Right. Yeah, like, I still look, like, every time we get an email comment, I'm like, oh my god. Like, I understand how much stuff is starting to tick up and how much we're getting. It's so cool to have this experience and this feeling. I just don't obsess like I used to. But if you look at our analytics, and I kind of want to take a screenshot of this and send it out, but you can see when we change shit, the line goes, I mean, it's up and down, but gradually has gone up. And it's crazy to watch the stats that have gone on with our channel in general. Just, again, not from the ego boost, but from, like, okay, I feel like we're doing something right. When we switched to the podcast, I think we figured out who we were. And now with VR, like, real moment here. When we got the VR, I wanted to be the first. I wanted to be the best. All the VR. There's obviously people like PSVR Frank. There are people out there like VR Upload that are way bigger than us and got onto it quicker than us, and have the connections and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know if they were necessarily quicker. It's just that they dedicated a channel to it.
Yes,
and we made it a part of our channel.
Yes. So it's just one of those things where, like, Do I wish that was a little bit bigger because there's a new medium as a great wave to get onto? Yes. But at the same time, if you look at it, you can see where the uptick happened when all that started going on. We figured out who we were, and we simplified who we were. And we now have the 3 podcasts every week. We do reviews, we do gameplays, we do streams. Like, these things are all happening as supplement, but if you ask us who we are at their core, you're always getting those 3 podcasts. That's guaranteed, unless something crazy happens in the real world in life. So I'm grateful, and cons are a big part of that, getting back to the topic at hand. And like you said, we kind of are 40-40-20, where it's like 40% VR, 40%. I would say it's probably more like 60-20-20 at this point, because VR is taking over. But we're VR, indie, and then us. And that's cool. That's the us part of us. I don't think we should ever lose, because you hopefully come back for us and our opinions on things and all that kind of stuff. Uh-oh, he's dying. You timed these really poorly, just so you know. You're real bad at this. He's hitting me. For those who can't see, he smacked me in the face.
Sorry. No, that you bring up a great point. And the us part is the part that I never want to lose, because
anybody can make gameplays and podcasts.
Anybody,
and all that kind of stuff.
Anybody can do gameplay, anyone can do reviews, anyone can do podcasts, but you watch ours and you listen to ours. And that means the fucking world to us, because we know that deep down at some level you must enjoy the banter. You must enjoy the way we present the
Blows
news.
my mind.
You must enjoy the conversations. Maybe because you're here primarily because you want to hear about Move 2.0 controllers or whatever the fuck it is.
I don't believe them. I believe you on that.
But you stay because hopefully you
like us.
Like the way that we put that message across, or
They
that
like
we
us.
provide
They
that
really like us.
content to you.
So
that's
Sappy moment.
a fun look back, at our con history and also just general history. But we do have a lot of exciting things lined up for the year. We're super pumped. We want to thank everybody again for all the support that you've given us for indie, for VR, and of course for our own show.
One of the goals I'm working on right now is get guests on the show or have segments going on in between on the podcast and potentially on indie as a thing.
The
so
supplemental stuff
we're
is
working on
something that we're continuously working to make it more interesting. I think you guys really like the reviews and the gameplay, so that's cool. The trailers are always fun.
Trailers are the easiest part. We just get a file and upload it.
Yeah, but I think that there's definitely more we could do for supplemental content. So I'm hoping that we can get on that train a little bit more. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. So we're approaching an hour 15 here, close to that. So I want to thank everybody for putting up with us. And
See you at Wizard World St. Louis 2018.
If you're at Wizard World St. Louis, drop us a line and we'll hook up with you and hang out for a bit if you want to. We'd love to meet a few of you.
Maybe John will be there. Still don't know John's last name, but maybe John will be there.
Good old John. So that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And as always,
welcome to the second level.
Bye-bye.
Ain't no game.